Padres Hot Tub, everybody. Craig Elsten, Chris Reed, Raphie Cantor back with you. It is November 7th, 2023. The winter general managers meetings have begun in Scottsdale, Arizona. The Padres have a couple Gold Glovers, and they have a couple pitchers on their roster as well. And like maybe literally only a couple of pitchers. We've got a lot to talk about today, but first I say welcome to my co-hosts and brethren. Mr. Reed, how are you today, sir?
Splendid, sir.
And Mr. Cantor?
I've just declined my option with the Padres, so I'm doing a little bit better. Scott Boras is taking me to open market, so we'll see how things go.
Outstanding. Your mutual option with Padres Hot Tub, however, remains intact and
executed.
We do appreciate that. A lot to come up on the show, including the battle for the new manager. We'll get a little bit into the Padres money situation, including some context that you probably do not have and do not know, but we'll learn on this show. We'll talk about something weird AJ Preller did this week, and we'll talk about the complete lack of pitchers on the staff and what we might or may not, I don't know, do about it. Maybe Matt Waldron really is our number 3 starter and we need to embrace a new reality. But I'd like to think not. First, some quick housekeeping. As you know, the best way to support this show is on Patreon, patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. If you're a brand new listener to the show, just completely randomly, and you came in today for one reason and another, and you'd like to subscribe to our free podcast feed, please do. Obviously rate, subscribe, offer us a review. We always appreciate it. But those who have consistently listened to the show and supported the show, please consider patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. I personally think the $5 entry level, dip your toe in fee per month, just for the Discord alone, is more than worth it, because given some of the online communities' statuses these days, especially for discussion and sports discussion and rational discussion, X ain't the spot.
No, sir.
So to speak. So nonetheless, patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. There's more benefits than that. There's plenty more. Check them all out at patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. But one of the things we're doing right now with our patrons is we're doing off-season watch parties. Of course, we have our watch party channel where we watch all the games together. And right now we're watching movies in the off-season. Our first one was Say Anything, which, I mean, personally, I thought was a wonderful success, but that's my favorite movie. So I assume I'm a completely biased candidate. But for our next one, we said, let's let the patrons decide. So last week on our Crossing Streams channel, I asked for nominations, Chris, for our next PHT movie watch party. We got a lot of nominations. We got quite a few nominations, including some really good movies and some extremely funny, not good movies.
Yeah.
But Matt Fryer Ben, who's been a guest on the show before, he had a genre. Basically, he was trying to tell us what to do. Matt Fryer Ben's like, here's what you guys need to do. You need to do a baseball movie every few weeks during the off season. And I was just kind of curious, and I know Rafe had to step away for just a second, but what do you think about that? I mean, we could do any movie or we could do baseball movies. What do you think?
The thing is, there's the greats, right? And no, we're not going to watch Major League. We can probably all quote it. Like that's an annual thing for spring training that we do in the privacy of our own homes. I do love the subset, there's the maybe not blockbuster movies that you think of, like The Fan with Dennis Hopper, for one, would be one that I'd love to revisit. The Scout with Albert Brooks. So there is quite a rich basket full of baseball movies to draw from. But I'm not necessarily tied to it. We can jump from back and forth. Raising Arizona was brought up, and man, I'd love to sit through that and talk with you guys with it. That's one of my favorites.
Okay, so here's what I think I'm gonna do. Okay. Because this was also something said in the channel, but it was something I completely agreed with by Mr. Pants. Someone's got to wear the pants around here.
Senor.
He said, Craig, make an executive decision, pick 3 of these movies and let us vote on it, because otherwise everyone just votes for the movie that they like.
Yeah. We need
and
we need to get to the knockout round somehow quickly.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I am picking 3 movies. The third of those movies is going to be a baseball movie and thus be indicative of a vote to continue to do baseball movies. Got it? So if you're voting for either of the first 2, you're saying, "Hey, let's just watch movies. Let's watch great movies together." If you're picking the baseball one, you're saying, "Let's watch baseball movies this winter." So I'm going to select Raising Arizona, The Big Lebowski,
Delicious,
and Mr. Baseball with Tom Selleck.
Tom Selleck, yeah, is he in Japan for that one?
Yes, he's in Japan.
That's what I mean. Like, so many that are just kind of rich and worth a revisit just to see what baseball was then.
I'm not sure I ever watched this movie when I was growing up, Mr. Baseball.
I know I did. I might have watched it multiple times, but I was young, like like 9 or 10. Like, I did not understand what that mustache was for.
Now, let me be clear. Raising Arizona and The Big Lebowski are both light years ahead of Mr. Baseball in terms of quality film entertainment. However, if you do choose to vote for Mr. Baseball, that means you want to watch Mr. Baseball, you want to watch The Fan, you want to watch Mr. 3000. We I don't know.
We can get into so many of them. And they can be baseball adjacent. The Fan isn't about baseball, but baseball adjacent.
Fever Pitch. Do we want to watch Fever Pitch?
I've never seen Fever Pitch, and I hear it's not bad. So, those are your 2. Like, I know it's Coen Brothers week, and it's pretty thick on Coen Brothers, but if you haven't seen either of those, those are must watches. Those are some of the best movies made in the late part of the 20th century.
Yeah, just be clear that it should be a third Coen. It should be the Hudsucker Proxy as the third choice.
Yeah, it's a little esoteric. You're getting into their deep cuts a little bit, whereas I think these are the poppier Coen Brothers movies.
For kids.
Yeah.
It's a great movie.
It is.
And I was recently referring to Jennifer Jason Leigh, and I'm completely referring to her character there, which is quick talking reporters. Hey, I got to get the scoop and I got to get it now. But anyway, so those are now I've told this to the whole crowd, but only our patrons can vote. So we're going to have that. We'll either host it on Patreon or Discord or both. We'll decide that when our esteemed producer returns. But okay, so we've made our choices. It's either Raising Arizona or The Big Lebowski, or it's Mr. Baseball, which indicates further baseball as well. And we've made our choices, and now we can move on. And I'm very glad with the process that we had with that little on-air producers meeting. By the way, next week's show, we're doing this on a Tuesday. Next week's show will be on a Tuesday as well. Chris had a thing last Monday. Raphie's got a thing this Monday. So we'll be on the 14th with our patrons and the 15th for everybody else next week as well. Okay. Here's something very simple at the top. Gold gloves. 2 gold gloves handed out. And everyone was bummed out when Nico Horner won the gold glove at second base, because that meant Ha-seong Kim did not. Everyone should have been bummed out when Brian Hayes won at third base, but Manny wasn't even nominated, which is ridiculous, awful, horrible, and bad, and not good. But there's a utility category. Did this start just last year?
It had to start extremely recently, because I don't recall this being a thing at all. Like, I'll figure it out. But yeah, if it wasn't last year, it was like 2020.
Well, if it wasn't made for Ha-seong Kim, it should have been, because Ha-seong Kim won the Gold Glove for utility. Obviously, he shines his excellence on every position that he plays, whether he's Kim Chato over at third or just Kim at short and second. Ha-seong Kim has been tremendous and thoroughly deserving of that Gold Glove. I thought he was deserving of the Gold Glove at shortstop last year. And I'm very happy, Chris, to see him win the Gold Glove this year.
He is the second winner of the Utility Gold Glove after Mauricio Dubon. Oh no, that would be the AL one. Yeah. So somebody else won it for NL, and he's the second one. I mean, if you watch the way the guy plays third base, it's hard to go, he's not the best third baseman in the league, not named Manny. And then you see him at second, and he's getting into the outfield to make plays. Nothing gets by him. That he may have had 2 the entire year that bounced off his glove. With Xander playing the way he did, Ha-seong Kim gave him the slack. You know, he eased off a lot of the pressure just knowing that Ha-seong is there. And first Asian-born Gold Glove winner, first Korean Gold Glove winner. Absolutely, he wasn't going to get MVP votes to get him in the finalist of that, even though that kind of stunk. But our guy going home with some trophies, with some, I guess it would be golden mitt.
Yeah, we always say silverware in soccer. Yeah.
Yeah. But he deserves it, and I know it's got to feel good for him and make a lot of the decision to come over here to uproot his life, to take on the challenge, the struggles offensively his first year, and then his breakthrough this year, because the Golden Glove is still a bit of an offensive award. I mean, it's literally about the mitt on your hand, but it doesn't go. It's going a little bit more in the direction with guys getting it just for their defensive prowess. But traditionally, you also have to hit, and he did hit this year. He certainly deserves it, and we're stoked about it, man. Like I think the fans would have been more upset with this than with Tatis missing the All-Star game if Ha-seong did not win one of those awards.
Yeah, just great capstone to an incredible year for Ha-seong Kim, who would have been on some MVP votes ballots if he had a September like the previous months. He very much tailed off after his injury, and to the point that he wasn't even leading off at some points at the end of the year. Nonetheless, his glove carried all the way through, and I think that's the last step for Ha-seong Kim, is to go through a full season where he holds up on both sides of the ball and doesn't wear down, and kind of has that stamina to get to the end of the year. I think it does take time, and he's been a full-time regular now for 2 years, but it was even more leaned on this year as a leadoff hitter. So I think, that literally computes to like 100 more at bats than he would have had the previous season just due to lineup placement. So really excited to see what happens in what will maybe be his last year as a Padre.
Stop
or
it. Stop
I
it.
don't know.
No, we're gonna manifest that HSK extension, even though it might not make any sense whatsoever with how many shortstops this team has.
Correct. Well, speaking of long extensions, but ones that did make plenty of sense at the time, Fernando Tatis Jr. also won a Gold Glove, and I think it's kind of been under discussed to some extent, because we all saw all season long how great Fernando was in right field. And for him to win the Gold Glove and beat out Acuna, among others, for the Gold Glove in right field, I mean, that's really, really impressive in and of itself. But it was his first year as an outfielder at any level ever. I mean, he dabbled with it in 2021, but he wasn't really playing the position. Like, Anthony Davis tried to play for a minute with a sore groin last night, and like, he was on the court as a human being, but he wasn't playing basketball. He was walking from a spot to another. Like, when Nando was out there in 2021, told never dive, careful, shoulders in trouble.
Yeah.
And he was out there on eggshells. He wasn't playing. He played the position this year. He played so well. He became the type of impact arm that I grew up watching in baseball, the arms that scare people. I remember Jesse Barfield with the Yankees and Raul Mondesi with the Dodgers and Ichiro, in the 2000s. As guys, you can't run on these guys. you're going to be doomed. It forces guys to stop at third. It gives your pitcher a second chance, when they gave up a hit with runners in scoring position sometimes to get out of the inning. He's so impactful. He played it so well. And to have embraced it and won a Gold Glove in his first full year back to competition, I think it really speaks to Fernando Tatis Jr.'s character as a baseball player. Whatever you think of him overall in the gestalt, I think as a baseball player, he comes to play day after day. He played through pain. He played through slumps. And to win the Gold Glove in his first season, I think it's just an incredible feat.
I mean, truly incredible. And it should be noted that Ha-seong also won the Gold Glove at a new position. He's a shortstop. He's a career shortstop. He's been bouncing around all over the place with the Padres, but second base full time was new for him, and filling in at third base, that's a new thing. Fernando Tatis Jr., man, is such an athletic marvel that you would almost not blame the guy for just leaning on it. I can get there. I'm going to do that, but from where he started in spring training, and he pulled receipts on Twitter, which was kind of fun. The people that said this is the opposite of Gold Glove center field or right field play of the dude playing in February in Peoria, battling against the desert sky. You can tell that it didn't just happen. Like, he learned the position. I wanted him to be right field probably since the second time I saw him throw a ball over the first baseman's head. It's like, oh, they've got too powerful a gun over there at shortstop. Right. That thing needs to be out there at long range where it can pick off guys. So it's almost like the opposite of the Padres curse. Now we have a right fielder who could be out there for 15 years. Like, easy, he can play that position. I am going to be very curious about the Padres center field position and to see if Nando is going to become the first Padre to get Gold Gloves at multiple outfield positions, because that's where I can see this going, man. Yeah, the athleticism, the range, and his route to balls is only going to get better. We saw him this year not take the best routes sometimes, maybe not get the best read off the bat. It's the first time he's ever done it in his life. So it's not going to happen overnight. And he was the best person in the league at doing it. So I think the possibilities are endless for the guy defensively. We watched runners in the beginning of the year test him all the time. And by end of June, middle of July, you're like, why are you running on Nando? You are writing your own death sentence on the base pass. He gets you out when you don't think it's going to happen. I'm pretty sure he had one throw over 100 out there, and several that were StatCast breakers. So the possibilities are endless, man. I'm very curious to see how many positions he's going to get Gold Gloves for throughout his career.
There was a Bob Nightingale USA Today blip earlier this week where he wrote, well, don't be so sure to think the Padres will trade Soto. Other GMs think they'll trade Bogarts or Tatis. And Fernando Tatis Jr. is tracking to have one of the best contracts in baseball. He's 24. He's already locked in. There's none of the, well, he's 24. What's he going to make in today's market? $700 million? No, it's 320, right? 320, 325, I forget. And it's locked for 14 years. He escalates slowly. Like a few years from now, he'll be making $20 million. He's already ridiculously underpaid. And if the Padres someday brought in the opposite of AJ Preller, brought in J.A. Relrup. And Relrup. Good old J.A. Relrup. The guy who hates shortstops. The guy who just wants to banish shortstops from the roster, one after the other. And he opened up shortstop for Fernando Tatis Jr., and Fernando Tatis Jr. came back to play shortstop at age 27. He'd fight for a Gold Glove there. Yep. He's one of the most uniquely talented players who's dedicated to his craft, who posts up every day, who was accountable for
And
a
that's
lot
what
of
we
his
got to see
failures
this
this year.
year for the first time. We got to see him play every day for the first time in his career. And right field might have been the thing that made that possible.
I agree. I think it reduces the opportunity for injury due to repeated diving, because he's also got the ambition when he's a shortstop to think that every ball just out of his reach is one he could dive and maybe get, and that this is the play he could make. So there's just a lot to be said, I think, for Fernando Tatis Jr.'s 2023 season. He wasn't particularly clutch like the rest of the team. He had some bad habits with runners in scoring position. His overall slug was obviously down from 2019 levels or 2021 levels. But it was his first year back.
Yeah, and
After
coming off of shoulder surgery, look what Bellinger did. Like, go ahead and throw those baselines together.
Look what happened with Acuna when he came back from injury, and then the year he had the year after. And Tatis spoke of Acuna and his recovery. They trained together in the Dominican, and he is looking for that Acuna jump in 2024. No one's harder on himself. No one is more expecting of himself to be great than Fernando Tatis Jr. I think he's the safest bet on the Padres as a player. Now, if somebody wants to do some real reporting about, like, is there somebody who has a negative impact on the clubhouse, and is it this person and why? I'll listen to it. But the objective criteria to me right now says that Fernando's the single safest bet on the entire team.
Bob Nightingale, I don't know what villain turn he took towards the Padres, but basically everything I've read from Bob the last 2 years, like really 2021, has been just shit stirring. Like, just getting up the shit and making it as stinky and gross as he possibly can to trigger Padres fans. There's no universe in which Fernando Tatis Jr. gets traded this offseason. It doesn't happen. Like, you talked about value, Craig, surplus value. Who do you trade him for? You'd need 4 guys that are Major League Baseball players in their first year with 6 years of control who are solid starters. It doesn't exist. He's not getting moved. That's just Bob Nightingale trying to piss off Padres fans and doing a decent job of it enough.
Now, seeing as I brought it up, I'll just say that at some point in this fall, I've said that there was like some outside possibility that the Padres could consider trading Xander Bogaerts. And that possibility, in my opinion, resided within Xander.
Yeah.
That if he was not cool with all of this,
well, and he has the no trade, so of course.
Right. But like, it wouldn't be AJ just going, hey, Xander, we've got a trade lined up that could send you to Florida. What do you think? There would have to be like a sincere discussion about, like, listen, we literally see you as a first baseman next year, and we know you don't want to do that. But if you're going to stay here, we're going to ask you to play first base. And he's like, I am not cool with that. And they said, well, listen, I've actually got a team in New York, or I've got a team not New York, but somewhere that would be willing to, trade for you. Okay, would you be cool with that? I saw people in the Discord like, whoa, they'd have to at least eat $100 million of his contract. Would they? What would Xander Bogaerts make if he was back on the market this year after putting up 4+ WAR? Now, we saw up close he was the most unclutch of the big four. To me, like, he was an automatic double play for 4.5 months. Xander Bogaerts was an automatic double play or pop up every single time he batted with the bases loaded with 2 on. He had those first 2-3 weeks where he was hot, and then from May till September, he was a pop up and a double play every time with runners in scoring position. In September, he hit like 500 with runners in scoring position.
From the times when he wasn't off and kind of hurt, I cannot remember a first-year free agent doing as well as he did with the Padres. That
first-year free agents usually struggle.
Yeah, that first month of him was like, oh wait, what? Like, did AJ Preller just hit a grand slam on a gigantic contract that everybody thought was going to be a boondoggle around the franchise. It just speaks to the shortstop thing, man. Did we need another shortstop? And did they talk themselves into something they didn't need, and now have to have that conversation with Xander, saying, "Hey, we kind of boned this one a little bit, guy. Our long-term plan may not be what yours is." And like you say, going to his agent, that's who the call would go to. It would be like, is there somewhere else that Xander wants to go that we can try to make a thing work? But I don't see that happening for next year. AJ wanted his bats. I will not back off of this. The Padres are fully committed to trying to win championships now, with their big four in their prime. And Bob wants to drop names. Sure. Xander works. And yeah, I believe him when he say the Padres do not want to trade Juan Soto. But I also think that this GMs are saying could have been one GM on a phone call with Bob saying flippantly, offhand, I know they don't want to trade Soto. I'm sure they'd rather trade Xander or Tatis than Soto right now. And that's all it could be. Right. And like we talked about our local reporting, when do you choose to reveal information, and what agenda do you have when you do that? Man, I trust Kevin AC 1,000 times more than Bob Nightingale. The guy is basically a troll to Padres fans right now.
I mean, I used to know Bob very, very well back in the not for nothing, in the mid to late 90s. He used to come on Coach's show at night. We used to go out afterwards, like to the Aero Club down off of Pacific. I'm not shitting you. He once, at the little airplane, gave us a scoop on something about Hideo Nomo. All I remember is it was something about Hideo Nomo. And back at the mighty 690, that was relevant because we were as much LA as we were San Diego. And I remember breaking that on the night show and leaving it for the morning show. And then the morning show said that they broke the story. And I got so mad at John Fricke and Sean Salisbury that I wrote this as a producer. I wrote this angry, screed on their whiteboard in their room. Really stupid, immature thing to do. And then immediately got suspended. And when I got pulled into the executive producer Joe Totino's office, he had the whiteboard with my screen sitting behind him. I was like, whoops, did I make an oopsie? But I used to, and I try to tell my son this all the time, I'm trying to tell everyone in my family this all the time. You can't change everyone. You can't make everyone in your own image. And there's sometimes that fighting for certain things will hurt you way more than it'll help you. And in that case, it was. We were just doing a personal, welcome back, Raphie. We were doing a little mini vamp to make sure that when we got into the serious stuff, you were back. So.
Okay, fantastic. Back. Yeah, you guys didn't fix the Padres in the 20 or so minutes I was gone.
No, we got to bash Bob Nightingale and then say that he used to be something different than he is now. And
then I got into a radio story, and that's where we were.
Well, haven't we all changed? Haven't we all changed?
In many ways. Many ways. Okay. Battle for a new manager. We record this again on Tuesday, November 7th, later than we intended. It's now early afternoon. I just realized I'm missing an MASL broadcasters call. Don't worry, I'm the best one. I don't need to be on that call. They want to talk to everyone else. But plus they're going to want to tell me to be on Twitch more and engage in more, and I'm not going to. So bouncing off of me anyways. So onward we move. So if by the time you're watching this, because we put it up a day later, or you're listening on the free feed and the Padres have announced their manager in the interim hours, don't worry, we've got another emergency show coming up. And we'll get to that. We'll definitely do that whenever they make this announcement. Right now, we've got a big 3 with a maybe 4. So let's talk about what's happened. The Padres officially have interviewed Mike Schilt, Flaherty, who I'm now trying to forget his first name, Ryan, John, Benji Gil, or as Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador said today, Benjamin Hill, and Carlos Mendoza, who is now the manager of the Mets. So too late on that one.
There's still a chance.
Missed out there. I mean, call back, see what happens. But
the value pick has been grabbed by the most rich owner in the game.
Has he passed his medical yet?
I was just gonna say maybe he didn't. Maybe he's got a steel pin in his leg or in his brain.
Yeah, that's what it would be. One of those construction site injuries. Nail gun.
I've got degenerative brain disease, but I'm a great manager for the next year or two. So yeah, he's scratch him off the list then. And now with Monday's fun / weird announcement that Craig Counsell, the hottest flavor of free agent manager, went up the NL Central geographically down from Milwaukee to Chicago, but certainly up because he's getting paid $8 million now to be manager of the Cubs. But that meant David Ross was pinched out of his job by the new flavor, Craig Counsell. And Kevin Acee reported yesterday that the Padres that they're considering interviewing David Ross. So maybe they've interviewed David Ross today. Or maybe they've done a Zoom call with David Ross today. We don't know. We certainly don't know. But I did want to talk about these finalists, so to speak, a little bit. And in particular, Benji Gil. I think there's a little bit of buzz around Benji Gil. Never mind that the Mexican president literally endorsed him
it's
impromptu.
International diplomacy.
Yes. So, if you want to work on border security, Benji Gil is a place to start. All right. That's a place you can start to repair relations. But he is, a Chula Vista native, Castle Park High School. We're very parochial here in San Diego. We love stuff like that. We do think a little bit in this part of the woods about like, okay, you're one of us. You really do care about us. You're going to fight for San Diego, et cetera. I like and am intrigued by not only his work with Team Mexico in the WBC, which is a tournament. It's not that big a deal, but he's been in the coaching ranks for a very long time. The bilingual nature, I think, in our clubhouse is a bonus and a benefit. And I kind of feel like he fits into that hungry, scrappy mode. I will say this as well. I think minority candidates for major positions in major American professional sports generally have to be 3 times as good as an average candidate just to get a chance. And I think Benji Gil could be one of those guys. I mean, you never know, right? There's always who is the Hugh Jackson. There's a Hugh Jackson in the mid, but I feel like he could be really good. Like he's always getting overlooked or only interviewed. Right now, I kind of hope they pick Benji Gil. Reaction.
They've been hearing me all the whole thing, Raphie. You gotta get in here.
Listen, I as much as this team has clearly indicated that they want to go the full Preller. I know we're going to talk about this later, but we have a new AAA manager who's never managed before. That's like seemingly,
but
just like,
he wanted to, Raphie.
He wanted to
in his
and
mind,
in the heart. That's what really matters.
How's he managed? Yeah.
But I got to be honest. Like I really am a fan of just bringing in different philosophies, so long as Benji can bend the knee to Daddy AJ Preller, because whoever comes in like has to know what their place is on the pecking chain. That's not on the food chain, pecking order, food chain. And I'm all good with bringing in someone from the outside. I think it could even be a bonus, but there has to be a complete and total understanding, because we can't go through the same thing we just went through where the front office and the managerial staff were on separate pages.
It's called a pyramid scheme, Raphie. And not just what we just went through, it's what every managerial hire has been through. So yeah, if we're throwing the wish list of external candidates, Benji Gil is at the very top for me. I've been talking with a bunch of people about this, and one of them was Ryan Phillips of the Big Lead, a good buddy of the show. And he mentioned that the Padres, as part of their financial plan, have been really trying to court international markets. And the two he mentioned were Mexico and Korea. And I don't know how great of a job they've been doing with Korea, because our guy Ha-seong Kim, as mentioned, is not extended past this year. I know putting Benji Gill in the captain seat in the dugout would go a long way towards making inroads for Mexico. That said, AJ Preller has done nothing but make clear in his own sweet, confusing way that they are searching for alignment with this hire. And if Benji Gill is like aligning in his interviews, then he's my guy. But what I don't want is the weird conflict between manager and GM anymore. We've walked that path too many times now. And if AJ has his internal stooges, and I don't mean to, crap on the resume of either Ryan Flaherty or Mike Schilt. They're both impressive in their own ways. But if AJ has already groomed one of those guys to be the aligned presence in the dugout, then I'm gonna be worried until I'm not, until we see the club really meshing behind their guy. But if we're talking external candidates, David Ross is a real flavor of the month. That I would be so worried if that were the announcement in the next couple days. Whereas Benji Gill, local guy, seems to play the right brand of modern baseball, and obviously can motivate guys in the dugout as he did during the World Baseball Classic.
Thoughts on, so you're a no on David Ross. Then Chris, how about you, Raphie?
I'm a no. I think it's just a bad look for the organization to be going for the scraps of another team, frankly. I also think that of all the candidates that we've had, he seems like someone who would be more like, I'm the manager. I'm going to come in and do things my way. I was a catcher. I run shit, et cetera, et cetera. So I just don't optically, I think it's bad. And I think from like a philosophical standpoint, it's bad.
Andy Green hates AJ Preller. David Ross has had Andy Green as his bench coach the last 4 years. David Ross is DOA. Just that insinuation and AJ's aversion to conflict. Conversation's dead before it begins. Yeah, no. Speaking of Schilt and Flaherty, I think we had all said before that we just assumed that Mike Schilt will be hired as the manager of the Padres. I'm still there, but my hope is that they hire Gill, or Heel. And if they hire Flaherty, it feels desperate to me, and it feels like a 1-year manager, because if this loses in 24, everyone's out the door. And we've picked the cheapest, most pliable option in-house because they've decided that even Mike Schilt is someone that they're not going to be able to work with.
Yeah,
career bachelor Mike Schilt.
At that point, have AJ just get the Bobby Valentine, like Groucho Marx thing, right? Our manager is JJ Preller, and he's in there, and he's got a mustache and wears dark sunglasses and a hoodie.
Right? Wasn't there a year that what's his name managed the Braves, Turner Sports?
Ted
Turner. Ted Turner was the manager of the Braves for a period of time. Like,
yeah, like that's
can we
like just do that. Go full,
Well, we've done an exhaustive search for manager, and it turns out the answer is me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be the manager, and now we're going to have real alignment between the GMs.
It's the way you align the hardest, man. Align hard.
Incredible stuff. Let's see what happens. I think it's Schilt. I hope it's Gill. If it's Flaherty, I'm bummed. If it's Ross, I'm kind of, really? I don't think it's going to be Ross. I think that's a late feint. But you know what matters the most in all of this? It's Niebla.
Oh,
It's Ruben Niebla.
speaking of
If there's
local
one
guys,
other name that I would completely accept as the manager of the Padres in 2024, it'd be Ruben bleepin Niebla, because that would guarantee that he was in the dugout for the San Diego Padres. You better not get your grubby hands on my Ruben Niebla, rest of MLB. This has got to be the Padres pitching coach. I mean, not since Ballsley have we had a guy that you just feel like he is an absolute advantage to the franchise to be there. Someone that can literally take one of these free agents that we're going to talk about later that is cheap or a reclamation project and polish him up and turn him into something that's a big time asset for the club. So whoever they pick, I hope that Niebla is announced to get a multi-year extension and a raise and a new named position or whatever.
I'm not worried about Ruben Niebla. He just was out last week at Point Loma Nazarene University, unveiling a new biomechanics lab. AJ Preller also emerged from hibernation. I'm told
Right
he saw
next
his
to him.
shadow, so there will be 6 more weeks of trade rumors for Juan Soto. But they were pictured there with their arms around each other. Like, that's not a thing that happens unless. I don't know. Well, I guess a month ago, Bob Melvin was going to be our manager going forward. So who's to say?
but there were no
I feel
pictures
very
of
confident.
them out in the community together.
Correct.
Like,
Exactly.
I'm with you, Rafe. If Ruben Niebla wants to manage and like feels like he's ready to do that, then sure, let's go for it. If he wants to manage, but the club thinks that he's better suited to being the pitching coach for a while, pay the man. He'll take it. He'll stay here. It's a good situation. Announce the extension. Make him the highest paid pitching coach. Because like you said, Craig, what are there? Like 5 pitching coaches in all of the league that you feel like give your team an advantage. You got Strom now with the Diamondbacks, and look what he did coming from the Astros. You pay those guys. You keep them in the org. You work their voodoo as long as you possibly can. So I almost hope that it's not what Ruben Niebla wants, just because we've seen how hard it is to switch jobs through all the different sports, upgrading from a coordinator or a pitching coach, whatever have you. I hope he's stoked with his job performance so far, because like you said, we haven't had confidence in our development like this in forever. Like, you can even look what he did with Mackenzie Gore, Nick Martinez. Like, all these guys have benefited from him, have been open. They've been explicit that Ruben Niebla helped did it. So yeah, that's the next extension I want to see, even maybe before Ha-seong Kim.
I don't really have a ton on this, but I just think Craig Counsell getting $8 million to be the Cubs manager is wild. And I know that head coaching and managing salaries are going way up. And like Monty Williams in the NBA got mad bank to move to Detroit. And I think he's the highest paid head coach now. I mean, Belichick's made ridiculous money.
But not in baseball, though.
Not in baseball. And I just think it's really weird that Craig Counsell, who is a good manager for sure, never won anything. Never won anything. They've won the Central.
Well,
maybe
he's been handicapped by a
once.
slapdick owner, like
Well,
all these guys.
They're paying for a premium for a couple of reasons. One, I think Counsell's from Milwaukee.
Yeah.
He's from Wisconsin, right? So
Yeah, he has parks named after him.
So they have to like pay him to swallow his local pride. That's number one. Number two, they're also paying a premium because they're kneecapping their number one division rival, in my opinion. They're taking away a number one asset from him and adding him to in their column, which is great for them. And also, I think it's a signal for the Cubs that they're going to be big spenders in free agency. If they're throwing $8 million at a manager, like, they're going to be playing for Ohtani. So I think that it was a statement hire by the Cubs, trying to announce what will be coming over the coming weeks and months. So it makes sense to me in that way.
I think it was Craig Counsell standing up for his job, like for his craft, saying that managers still have a place to be valued. I know the Mets can go out and spend $1.5 million on a bench coach, and he can probably do the job and, work well with the front office, but there's still a craft that comes with managing a baseball game. And I've heard it talked about a lot on other podcasts. I'll give Effectively Wild a shout out. They've talked about how college coaches make more than major league coaches, major managers, excuse me. They'll have twice or three times the average salary that a major league manager has. And that's because teams have purposely devalued the position. We talk about being a pro labor pod. Being a manager is a life consuming job. It's a career that leads to you putting all of yourself into something. And to see Craig Counsell stand up and demand that be valued appropriately, I think is great. Bob Melvin was going to be the highest paid manager in Major League Baseball, making $4 million a year. And Craig doubled that. And that's going to have ramifications down the line for guys that become the next Craig Counsell.
Absolutely, because Bob Melvin has more of a credential than Craig Counsell does. And the guy who should be paid the most is Bruce Bochy, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean,
did you read that
obviously
the Krasovic piece about how the Rangers owner filling the ditch is what did it?
That was good. Ditch filling, very important. Preller saw that ditch. He didn't even think about filling it. He was just like,
what the hell is that? Some bodies to hide. Is that cool?
Yeah. Is that where you put your documents? Okay. So moving along. Hey, great for Craig Counsell. I just think it's, okay. It's going to be a lot of pressure on that job. Managing the Cubs has never been easy in the history of the Cubs. And Theo Epstein is also his GM. Like, he's not going to have complete autonomy.
Yeah. But that's why he's standing up for that particular job. And I do think the Cubs are going to invest. Maybe not all this year, but I think the Cubs are going to be one of the top 3 payroll teams next year.
And they should be, by the way.
For sure.
They're like one of the top 3 brands of MLB franchises. And the fact that they haven't been is a stain on the game and exactly all the things that are wrong with, MLB managers being penny pinching the way that they are.
Oh, and they have their own network, Marquee Sports, which, speaking of which, let's transition now and do some translation of some money talk. And we're going to do this in a way that is as careful as I think we can, because when you talk about clubs and their finances and even information that maybe we've been given in terms of what the Padres finances were, some of the Padres, critically some, but not all of the Padres finances for 2023, there's a ton of context that's missing, which can lead to erroneous thought processes and erroneous decisions and conclusions being made. We're going to dig into this because even last week, Chris got some information from a Padres source. And we've had a couple of Padres sources be good to us over the course of the year. And this is another example of a Padres source being good to us that gave us some image of some specific areas of the Padres revenue for 2023. Now, we're going to dig into this. I did put at the top line just for the context that last week a report came out that the Padres took a $50 million loan in September, in part to cover the cash flow of their day-to-day operations, including payroll, which got immediately boiled down in the crucible of public opinion to Padres needed to take a loan to make their payroll because they're cash poor and they're overextended and they're broke. And that's why they got to trade Juan Soto. And that's why they got to tear everything down. And again, the monopoly man with the pockets out turned, so sorry, we're broke around here. And like literally, like, I'm not even kidding you guys. Like at the YMCA, I heard some guy about, hey, did you hear the Padres had to take out a loan to pay at the freaking Starbucks? Like, hey, did you hear about, like, it was the literal like water cooler level of like, hey, did you hear this? It really rang loud in the community, but the sound might have been hollow if you knew what was going on, Rafe.
And really, really quickly before I toss it over to Chris, it wasn't just that like the Padres had to take out a loan and they're broke. Also the undercurrent was, and it's because they're stupid. It's because they don't know how to run an organ, and they overplayed their hand, and they were bad boys. And now they're going to be punished because they were bad boys and they didn't know what they were doing. And I just like, as we're going to get into in a second, like that is so much of a jump to a conclusion based on a limited scope of information. And I want that to be at the front of people's mind as we talk about what we're about to talk about, is that the underlying current is that the Padres were stupid, and we don't necessarily know that that's the case.
Yeah, and they're in over their head. I didn't even mention this, but because when I read that piece, in the second paragraph, it lays out how there might be agendas at play from this information that isn't, purely for the good of the Padres. There are people who have reason to shit on the Padres because they've been cheap ass franchises forever and have, done this economy of making money off of shared revenue and not putting it onto the field. So I actually reached out to Dennis Lind, one of the co-authors of that piece, and I just wanted to get a little tiny bit of like elaboration on those paragraphs because I thought they were being important and I thought they were getting ignored. And what he said is that it's not uncommon for these loans to get taken out. Like this happens. Like it doesn't get reported on every time it happens because it's part of normal business for major league teams. But what he said was around the league is this, that it was kind of odd for it to happen in the midst of the team having record attendance and record ticket revenue coming in. So that's kind of odd. You're filling more seats than you ever have, and yet you still need to take out this loan. So that's where Dennis kind of landed on it. And prior to that, the week before, like you guys mentioned, we had gotten some information from a Padres source. And what they gave us is something that you don't get to see a lot, but it was only a partial look at what you never get to see. And that was, we got to see the Padres revenue based on tickets and things that were not TV. And we got told that the Padres made $195 million in tickets last year, which is a lot of money and is kind of where you would expect a team with a near $250 million payroll to start with their balance sheet. Now, like Craig said, this is not even half of the picture because we don't get to see expenses. We don't get to see team salaries that aren't on the field. We don't get to see, and they have over 200 plus employees. It's a very limited look at the Padres balance sheet and should not be taken as anything other than we got to see how much they made by the fans showing up and watching Padre games.
And to even clarify that further, when you say we got to see, there were no books open.
True.
You were told some numbers.
Yes.
So a source told you some numbers is different from I looked at a balance sheet and at the bottom it said this. It said $195 million because that's an official document, a legal document. And none of that took place. But again, to underline, the number that we were given for Padres ticket revenue 2023 was $195 million. For total excluding television income, the number was $305 million. So that would include all the corporate partnerships, all of the different advertising deals, etc. For the Padres. So a little over $300 million in income that the Padres generated for themselves. Then you had their streaming deal, which was supposed to pay them $60 million.
Local TV deal, not streaming.
Local TV deal, pardon me. Their local TV deal was supposed to pay them $60 million. However, as we know, Bally Sports reneged on their payments. MLB took over the Padres for streaming broadcasts at that point. And the Padres at that point were guaranteed $48 million, 80% of their total. So we can know that that's what they got because they couldn't have got more than that from that situation. In addition, they get about 60-ish, 65-ish million dollars more from all the various deals, whether it be Fox or WB or ESPN or Apple, all the various deals that they've made to distribute their content that is then distributed to the clubs. They made about $60 million from that. But we also know they pay in to the MLB pool as in revenue sharing. They are a contributor to revenue sharing this year for the first time in history. So that takes some money out of the pot in terms of what was brought in. And we also know that they were a second time competitive balance tax aggressor. Third? Second time over the thing, I forget. But so that cost them a whole crap ton of money as well in taxes that they paid that went to nothing. I mean, poof, went back to MLB. Yeah. I guess they distributed charitably, or I don't even know what the hell they do with it.
Went to the Pirates, into the Royals, into the Rockies, and all those lovely franchises.
Right. So, okay. So those are numbers. What do they mean? What don't we have to complete this picture? Most importantly, we don't know the money out. So in addition to all the expenses that you wouldn't think about to run a ball club, from, the lights, power, water, utilities, etc., cleaning, everything else, as mentioned, a staff of well over 200. There's no word on executive compensation, is there? Like, in terms of like, what does the board make? What does the chairman assign himself for a salary, if anything?
What
it could
Peter
be zero.
Seidler spending on Cardiff Crack? What is he writing off on the Padres? It could be
right. There's a lot that leaves this as an incomplete picture, and much like Rachel Maddow holding up one page of Trump's tax returns, like you learn something, but sometimes that can actually make you more confused as opposed to less. So the thing that I kind of want to explore, if we can, is just the idea that the Padres had a reckless offseason in 2022-23, that they just went like crazy, go nuts. And now they're facing the repercussions of their actions. I summarily reject the idea that the Padres went crazy, go nuts, and didn't have a plan behind their spending. Now, did some of it go wrong? Obviously, they won 82 games and didn't make a dime in the postseason.
Yeah,
they were counting on
that money for sure, no doubt.
But I don't think that they know all the numbers, and they made the choices they did, and they didn't sign a whole bunch of Justin Verlanders, or not the player but the contract type Trevor Bauers, like 2 years at $1 gazillion a year, going like, this is going to be our 1 year gambit. They signed a 10-year extension to Machado, an 11-year contract to Bogarts, a 6-year extension to Darvish, a 5-year extension to Musgrove, a 7-year extension to Jake Cronenworth. They made decades-long commitments to multiple players on the staff. Is there anything here that speaks to recklessness?
No, they got a baseline of $200 million coming in. As long as the seat's getting filled. But what we've talked about, like, that number could go down, and they've raised ticket prices accordingly, and supposedly have no longer they're through the wait list is now back on. If you want a membership, you now have to get back on the wait list. So I don't think there's anything here that makes you conclude that Juan Soto is gone. I don't think there's anything here that makes you conclude the Padres are out. The reporting is that they need to get the number down. The reporting has been wrong every single year. Every single time we've been given a number about what to expect for Padres payroll, it's been nothing. So I think the only reasonable, sensible thing is just to watch and see what happens, because that's going to tell you where it is this offseason. If the Padres go into it with Joe Musgrove as their number 1 starter, Yu Darvish as their number 2, Joe Musgrove as their number 3, Yu Darvish as their number 4, Joe Musgrove as their number 5, then yeah, we're going to be able to assume that they've probably done something, pretty dumb. But until that happens, like, the team is making money. Like, they've got a fair amount of revenue coming in.
Yeah, there's a Fangraphs estimated 2023 payroll at $255 million. So there is a $157 million black box of a gap between what, they theoretically could be spending as an organization while still being flush, or versus if they're going over. And, another point in the article that was kind of buried in the talk about it was that, the Padres are not in compliance with MLB's debt obligation rules in terms of, how much money they've taken out, et cetera. But that at any given point, somewhere between a quarter and a third of the league is out of compliance with that. So, you see the scary headline, Padres out of compliance with MLB debt rules, and you can run with that as much as you want until you read the fine print and you're like, okay, actually it doesn't seem like it's even that abnormal for the league. So we're never going to get the full picture because unless the Padres become like the Atlanta Braves and their financial information becomes available, that's not going to happen for us. And unless we have that full information, we're not going to see the full picture. So
we're
it's
losing
kind of
relativity, right? Like we don't get to see the Reds books. We don't get to see the Orioles books, despite their owner saying that he gladly opened them for reporters whenever they want. So losing our minds over where we are without having any relative basis for comparison, it's stress for no reason. And jumping to conclusions, like I saw a lot of San Diego radio, my beloved Kaplan and crew, saying that Juan Soto's now officially gone because of this $50 million loan that could have been planned for, as Craig says, going into the season. Like the club thinks they're going to make $25 million in the playoffs, and that disappears. So around the All-Star break or whenever they approach for this loan, they go, all right, well, we've got to make that up on money that we thought we were going to have, but we're not. So we're a gigantic company that's seen our equity go up 3 times in the past 5 years. We can borrow against that any friggin' time we want, like any other American company does every single day. And it only becomes a news thing because this is just me, my opinion. I think there's a lot of dirtbag owners, and I think there's a lot of poverty franchises out there that had a lot of egg on their face when the Padres went out and spent money. And that Major League Baseball, including its commissioner, are going to do everything they can to kind of undermine the strategy the Padres have had. So that's where I land with it, man. I think there's a lot of people out there that made to look bad, made to look foolish by the Padres spending, and now they're trying to create a narrative the other way around. And we can't jump to conclusions about what their plan is because the Padres have surprised us every single offseason.
Agreed. Just a couple other notes on this. If the Padres, who had 59 sellouts at Petco Park, got some money from the Mexico City series as well, made $195 million, and they're increasing their ticket prices by 20%, well, now we could have a concrete way of saying that they would go up approximately $38 to $40 million from where they are now and could get to somewhere around $235 maybe million in ticket sales if they matched attendance with increased cost next year. That's a big if that depends on how the club plays.
Can I clarify something that we didn't discuss before we started recording? Is that 20%? I know that's for season tickets. Is that also for single game tickets and any of the other stuff? Are we seeing 20% across the board?
Have they announced single game prices yet?
I mean, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's an unknown potentially. But if we assume that if we assume it's 20% across the board, then yeah, $38 to $40 million more, which is, I mean, like, you can spin that either way. You can say that's not enough nearly for what they need to bring, but I'm of the opinion of like, that's a huge amount of money. Your number one revenue stream is increasing by 20%. That's a lot of money.
They have not. Single game tickets are not available right now.
Okay.
Yeah. And they use dynamic pricing, which is a cute corporate euphemism for we charge you more for the same thing sometimes because we know you want it. And I think that's one of the balloons we want to pop with this type of information is the person who on a Saturday night bought a single game ticket to see the Padres play the Dodgers and paid, $120 for that ticket. And then they start just doing in their mind, well, if every ticket in this place is $120 times 81 games, well, they made $580 million or whatever, this year. That's just a mile off. That's way, way off. And it's faulty thinking. And there's a lot of faulty thinking that goes into than a quick decision and a quick opinion being formed on stuff like this. MLB clubs are opaque. All right. So just going back to stitch on what Raphie was talking about. If a third of the clubs in Major League Baseball are out of compliance with the debt leverage rule, guess what? There's not the IRS marm, Jamie Lee Curtis there from Everything Everywhere All at Once going like, you must go down 50 million. Like, if it's very much possible and equally worthy of being in a narrative that the Padres and MLB work out a plan that gradually draws down the payroll over a period of 3 to 5 years, where next year they're at $235 million. Oh my God, what happened? We must be broke. Oh no, that could never happen. We've got people in our Discord every day soberly saying, well, that's just not the reality. And it's just not the reality of the situation. They just cannot afford it. And unfortunately, they are just leveraged and they cannot afford it. Like, you don't know the books. You don't know what's going on. Even this information doesn't give you more to hang on to one way or another, in my opinion. But to just go, well, this, therefore that. Yes, maybe the Padres will cut their payroll by 50, 55, 60, $75 million this year. Maybe. But if it's 15, they still cut their payroll. They're still closer to 200 than they were before. And they're probably working in a direction. I think the things you need to look for are, do you go sign someone to a crazy free agent deal? Or do you trade out all of the young players that you're hoping to swap in more affordably the next 2 to 3, 4 years? If those two things don't happen, I see the Padres' path to 200 million being pretty easy, to be honest with you.
Can I just say something too about this attitude of people just being like, oh, well, that's what happens. You just can't spend the money. Like, I think that there is, of course, people who are concerned about the business side of things and everything. And there's a certain sober-mindedness you could bring to that. But I also think a lot of it is like internalized capitalistic self-hatred. Like, I'm not to go like too deep, but it comes from like a very puritanical place of like, I must be prudent and I must spend, just kind of deny myself and not spend because that's how sin happens. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, it goes deeper than just like, they shouldn't spend this much money. There's this mindset that people have that like, they're so scared of taking risks and getting out over their skis. And so they assume that tragedy will befall because we are being too prideful or some way. And I just like don't think that that's true. I think that like people are speaking from a place of fear because they don't want to go back to debt reduction, and even further than that, they don't want to go back to like Tom Werner and like, just like rolling out a ridiculous, and they think that like as Padres fans, that's what we actually kind of deserve. And like,
Bingo.
That's where it comes from.
Bingo.
And it's like, I would counter that with just a few very wise words. Scared money don't make money. Okay. Like, if you're playing like that, you are going, it goes right back in the curse conversation. Curses aren't real unless you think you're cursed, and then they are. And so it's like, if you think that you're a poor team, you are a poor team. And that's what comes back to the front of this. So there's a black box. We don't know. Scared money don't make money. That's all I have to say on this.
Perfect, Raphie. You crushed it, man. It's a Padres fans thing. We've just seen shit like this before. So we think our brains, our scared primal brains, see the pattern. We see all the things lining up for the nightmare to start, and we don't know. Don't get anxious. Take a breath. If there's anybody on this team that I trust in the front office, it's the money people.
Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah. And again, anything may and could happen. We're all here on the side watching the river go by, but some people like to look at one piece of wood and decide that, that meant that the whole forest fell down, because there's a piece of wood in the river. And it's like, there's a lot you didn't see, and there's a lot you don't see. Do the Padres need a TV deal? Yes. Are they going to get it? No. Are they going to be streaming? Yes. Is it going to cost them a lot of money? Yes, it's going to cost them a lot of money. Was I worried about that while the season was going on and we did a show about it in September? We absolutely did. We've been covering these streets for the Padres all the while through. And the TV situation's real. It's real. The Dodgers get money, the Mets get money, the Cubs get money that the Padres do not and will not, because no dope is hanging out ready to create Marquee Sports San Diego. Like, it's not coming. So that is something the Padres have to work around 100%. And if you told me that in part they took out a loan for that, I'd completely understand that too.
Yeah, like that's part of it right there, right? Like they lost $20 million or $12 million off of their TV deal. And they lost probably 20, 25 off of not making the playoffs. You're already at 40. Like, it's not necessarily business malpractice. It could just be real world events having to change your fiscal, like, what you have to do.
The club has said consistently they're going to fight for a championship every year this decade.
Yeah.
And gosh darn it, I'm going to hold them to it. And every year this decade, I'm going to hold the Padres in every way that I can accountable to their determination to be great. We want the Padres to be great again. We need to make them great again. And right now, 82 wins ain't going to cut it. But everyone who's pulling their pockets out and just like, let's hang on. Bake uncertainty into every single time, including what we've done in this discussion right here about people's finances. You better bake that uncertainty in every time unless you've got the books yourself. And then I'm going to ask you, are you an accountant? Because if you're a chiropractor, I still don't think you're going to understand anything. Here's something weird. The Padres have a new AAA manager. His name is Mike Daly. He's not the radio sound imager named Mike Daly that I've known for years, to my knowledge.
Good to know.
He was formerly...
Did he want to be a manager?
He is a wannabe manager, Mike Daly, and now he is a manager. He's a will-be manager because AJ Preller named Mike Daly, who is the assistant farm director for the San Diego Padres, the new manager of the El Paso Chihuahuas. Mike Daly, prior to being the assistant farm director for AJ Preller, was the assistant general manager to Chris Young in Texas. Chris Young took the job and let him go, / allowed him to be interviewed by AJ Preller. We know how that works. And Mike Daly, fun fact, has never been a manager or coach at any level of his life or career.
Can I just posit a philosophical question out there? Has anyone seen Mike Daly and Jace Tingler in the same room before? Because this sounds like the same thing. If Mike Daly says that the Chihuahuas battled, I'm gonna run through a wall.
Scooping, battling. I mean, I guarantee you he said that he's managed a lot of games in his mind. I mean, that must really work with AJ Preller. Like, AJ's like, dude, every day I managed 2,432 games in my mind. It's bizarre. And it's the same number every day, 2,432. Like, I can believe that AJ Preller gets turned on by that. So this is
alignment. They're so aligned.
They're completely aligned
across interstate boundaries.
This is the third AAA manager for the Padres in 3 years. So Preller's stability extends throughout the organization.
This could be great, guys. Like, let's be honest. Do we care if the Chihuahuas win any games? No. We care that talent's being evaluated, it's being developed, and they're getting made major league ready. So this dude's a front office guy. He knows what to look for. Hopefully he's better at communication than his boss.
All I can say is this is obviously what AJ wants.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Like if he could hire Mike Daly to be the manager of the Padres, I think he probably would. Like if he could literally, or Josh Stein, to be the manager of the Padres, I think he probably would, because then he'd know that he'd have his ally right there by his side every single day. And obviously he doesn't give a shit about what it takes to be a manager for a good team, because he just had one and he managed to make that guy so sour on the experience of being in San Diego that he ran to the Giants. Just blows my mind. Like, I wish I could never talk about AJ Preller again.
It might be okay, Craig. It might be okay.
Sure. I mean, I don't care. I don't officially and on the record, I don't care who the AAA manager is. I think it's weird that we're changing the manager in AAA every year, and now we just put in a guy who I don't even know if he's played Stratomatic. Like,
like at least OTP guy.
Look, if at least if you're going to be a manager with no experience, I want to know that you've played a good 1,000 games of Stratomatic and you know what a lefty platoon split is.
Like, just might be really important this year that there be better synergy between the pro ball club and the AAA ball club, or even better, the AAA ball club knowing what's going, who's looking good to get, that's what I like. I think it's very important when you're trying to cut costs, like they are on the record having to do, that they have the best pair of eyes they do at their affiliate at the next level down. And it's not going to come from statistics. It's not going to be.
That's true.
It's the moon. So I don't know. I'm not too worried about, like I said, I've given in to AJ's alignment because I don't have a friggin' choice. They kept the guy, they kept him in charge of everything. So let's go full AJ. And this is obviously as full AJ can get. Who knows? We might be seeing the sod poodles have the assistant to the assistant of player development be taking over responsibilities.
Okay, well, speaking about guys who aren't going to be here, let's and look, we've already gone. We're into the second hour of the show, so we're not going to sit here and do another hour on free agent pitchers that are available. We've got next week's show too. All right. Let's just say and talk about what happened this weekend, because at least one thing very much surprised me. The thing that surprised me was that the Padres declined Michael Wacha's team option. We had come around to the thinking that they might at least do it. But they didn't. And when they didn't, Michael Wacha immediately, because his was the lowest of the group, bizarrely, said $6 million, no thanks. And so now Michael Wacha is a free agent. Nick Martinez hired Scott Boras over the weekend.
That's the most surprising thing for me, man.
Does Scott Boras really treat his 300th client as well as his first? We're about to find out.
No.
I mean, it's his whole corporation. I loved the announcement was my favorite, though, because it was Dennis Lin tweeting, "Sources tell me and Ken Rosenthal that he's now retained Scott Boras." I'm like, I think the sources bot Scorus. I don't know why there's this reticence to name Scott Boras, like telling people he signed someone, but for some reason he likes that.
Yeah. So then the Padres declined his team option, which we knew they were going to do, and he immediately declined his $2 million higher option and is headed to market. Seth Lugo had already declined his player option, which we knew he was going to do, and he's gone to market as well. So look, don't go to the Fangraphs depth chart right now. Like, it's a waste of time. There's 34 people on the 40-man roster. This isn't the way it's going to end. Matt Waldron will not be the Padres' third starter with Jay Groom, the fifth starter, in 2024. That's not going to be the case. I mean, will it be the case at some point in the year if a bunch of people get hurt? Yeah. But they're going to be on the depth chart. But I think they're going to be 6, 7, and 8. And I think that 3 more starters are going to come to San Diego. And honestly, guys, I think the Padres are doing what we asked them to do, which is not to hang on to the memories of the guy you had, but to remember the process you used to find them in the first place. And as long as they're finding the next $6 million, $7 million deal on the market to get useful third, fourth, and fifth starters, the Padres are going to be able to make a perfectly legitimate starting rotation this offseason.
I just had a realization. So we've long questioned on this show the Jake Cronenworth extension. But
Hmm.
yeah.
I'm seeing Michigan colors in my head.
Yep. Remember? Utility player who sometimes pitches in the minor leagues, Jake Cronenworth. All of a sudden, the extension makes sense. And why he hasn't been pitching so far, they've been saving up those innings. They knew that 2024 was going to be a year in which we were in dire need of starting pitching. Why not save the elbow?
Right.
We got to keep him at second base or first. I mean, we got to move him to first base. We can't have him throwing because he's going to be up on the hill in 2024.
Ramp him up, baby.
Yeah, ramp him up. So I don't know. That would be, all of a sudden 7 years, $80 million. That looks like a bargain.
What a deal.
Yeah.
75 innings of 1 ERA relief.
Yeah, we're slotting Jacob Cronenworth in for 125 innings next year. Means we still need 525.
This is good. This is all very good. Do we think there is, or let me ask it this way: what percentage chance would you give the Padres to rework a deal with Michael Wacha, gentlemen?
Not high.
Well,
I'm trusting, like you said, Craig, they're trusting their process. And dude has tired shoulder. That's literally what he has. So I just look at the spot track injury counters to see how much guys have made while injured. And Michael Wacha's getting older, and he's made a lot of money while injured. And that's not going to help the Padres when they need all these innings.
They must have been meaningfully far away in terms of their internal evaluation of Wacha and their risk factor and what they were willing to give him. So I would put that as unlikely. I especially because the window they get like a 5-day exclusive negotiating window before they're like unrestricted free agents. That has come and gone, and I think that would have been worked out in some way, and it would have been announced. I think, by now that they had come to some sort of accord, and they didn't. So I think he's gone.
Okay, so then we don't have to continue the exercise. If Wacha is not going to be reworked to a deal, then Lugo nor Nick Martinez will be reworked.
Yeah, with Martinez hiring Scott Boras, like kind of king of the maybe screwing over client number 300 as they go to free agency. Looking at you, Jurickson.
I was just gonna say Jurickson's name.
Yeah,
couldn't you see that happen to Nick Martinez, where it's March and he's not signed?
Yeah. We talked about that a few weeks ago. That he's pitcher Jurickson Profar. Like that's the same thing, and now it's literally repeating it. Yeah,
like
the
it
Padres
just makes me Nick didn't enjoy this last year and how he got used, and that might have been some of the conflict between AJ and Bob. If Bob's gone and Nick Martinez still wants to be gone,
hey, if Nick Martinez was saying the whole year, I think I'm better suited to be a starter, and AJ was saying, I think you should find a way to put him in the rotation. And Bob Melvin's like, he's my highest leverage reliever, and dadgummit, I'm going to keep pitching him every single bases loaded 1-out situation in the 6th and 7th inning. And I mean, Nick was so bad at that.
Or vice versa. Like, what if AJ was saying, no, we want to save that arm, keep him in the bullpen? Like we don't know. Like it could have been.
We literally don't know. It's all fan fiction. All of it. All of it is fan fiction.
We just know he didn't want to be a Padre next year because he could have gotten paid $8 million to do it, which is a pretty seemingly close to his value. Like it's on the margins if it's undervalued.
I agree.
And he said no.
Okay, then last thing on the show, and there's nothing to it as well. Qualifying offers extended to Blake Snell and Josh Hader. There's a 0% chance that either one of these players accepts their qualifying offer. And thanks to being multiple year luxury tax CBT offenders, the Padres will not pick in the supplemental. They'll pick after the 4th round, I believe. Right? They get a post 4th round pick, a couple of them, when those two guys sign with other teams.
Which is a massive, massive step back. Like those guys, a typical, after the 1st round, supplemental round A qualifying offer guy, that's like, it could be a 45 future value prospect, which is a, potential major leaguer. And after the 4th round, you're getting into the 35 plus future value guys. So it's, it's a huge difference.
Aren't there interesting rules starting with either at the 5th round or after the 5th round with like slot compensation and that kind of thing that the Padres could pick a promising high schooler in the 4th round not expected to sign, and offer him a boatload of money?
Yeah, they could manipulate cap by picking someone way under slot in the
Yeah.
first round, picking a 5th-year senior or something, or a guy coming off of surgery, Tim Stauffer. They could do something like that. The little dorky kid that we took when Cam Whitson didn't, Spangenberg,
Yeah.
someone like that.
The little dorky
Corey.
kid.
The little
He's a
dorky kid.
Corey.
I'm sorry. That's what that's the bin he fell into in my mind after his illustrious San Diego Padres career, was the little dorky kid. Like, we never should have picked this guy. We could have picked someone good, but we took under slot to be affordable that year. Okay. Look, those are the type of things the Padres used to do. One thing I'm very happy about AJ Preller's run as general manager is that he has spent big and bought, made big decisions in his drafts, in his international signings. He looks for great talent. Has he hit every single time? No, but he's hit pretty well the last 3-4 years. He's had productive drafts over the course of, and he has taught this organization not to think small. Now, he's been misguided in many of his big moves, which is what makes him such a mixed bag, and why I'd love to not talk about him anymore. And his kind of, authoritarian tendencies, bring him closer to AJ Smith than to the opposite of AJ Preller, which is, as we already learned in the show, J.A. Relrup. Exactly. Relrup. J.A. Relrup. So he's neither of those things, but I don't think he's a guy that we're going to start seeing drafting Corey Spangenberg ever again.
Yeah.
And I'm still happy about that. And that's my last button on this episode, which has talked about money and talked about guys leaving for money, that I'm glad, if nothing else, that this is an organization that isn't thinking about like, well, we just need to draft Spangenberg and save some more cash and we'll be good. At least I don't think so. Anything else, guys?
I just want to get to the little fandom thing, and it's sad to see Snell but Snell and Martinez, their Padres careers end. But fingers crossed, the club is operating under the process, getting new guys that Ruben Niebla can tinker with, and we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah. Again, the notable departures are on the pitching side. The anomaly of last year was on the hitting side. If the hitting squadron is reassembled, I feel confident that there's going to be positive regression. I feel extremely confident in that. So that's where my focus is on. I am not worried about the Padres being able to cobble together a pitching staff. I don't know that it will be as dominant as last year's was, which we had a very good pitching staff last year. But I do feel confident that it will be passable. And if we get that offensive regression, we will be playoff contenders. So that's where I stand. And go Padres.
And go Padres. Go Padres.